handoff here. And just fighting through. Dragons are pushing, pulling. And the referee on the side says it's a touchdown.
Hola y bienvenido. Estás escuchando al Barcelona Bad Boys podcast. Estoy tu hueste, anfitrión. Don't really know what the correct word is for host in Spanish. I think it's hueste. I used to say anfitrión. I'm gonna say both, and whichever one works. But estoy tu hueste, Jordan Pryor, aka J Pryor, the sports guy. And yeah, Barcelona, we have a lot to talk about after our most recent loss to the Milano Seamen, 27-18, in a game that for 2.5 quarters we were the better team. For one quarter, we completely shat the bed, and everything fell apart. And then for the last half quarter of the game was garbage time, and it really didn't matter. So I'm coming to you live from my balcony. My wife is actually using the office right now to read. She's trying to catch up on a book. But yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Colorado. I'll add a little picture of the view that I currently have. It's gorgeous. I can see the mountains. It's a beautiful day outside, partly cloudy. Got a little strawberry margarita in my hand. And yeah, very disappointed in today. I didn't make a reaction video to the really bad loss to Tirol. Simply because everything that I talked about in the previous loss was recreated in that loss times a million, basically, whenever we played Tirol. And then I didn't make a reaction pod to the Helvetic game, more so because I had some prior obligations. And also, I really didn't feel like, even though we won that game, that we had fixed really any of our problems. So yeah, that leads us to here, where we again lost to the Milano Seamen, 27-18, in a game that, for the most part, we were the better team, and that's what really hurts here. Is despite our weaknesses throughout this game, we were the better team. So, just going to dive into this. I'll start with the negative. I will end on the positive. I do think that some toxicity that I bring to a lot of these reaction pods is, as a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I always have a tendency to talk way too much shit about my team. And I never focus on the positive things because, as a Dallas Cowboys fan, there's really nothing positive to talk about. So, I'm going to talk about the negatives first, but I will get to some positives because there were some positives that came out of this game, especially with us being the better team for 2.5 quarters. So, but to dive into frustrations that I think Dragons Nation is feeling right now, first and foremost, and this has been our biggest weakness since day one, is the O-line, and the coaching for the O-line is atrocious. I'm talking crimes against humanity. The UN needs to step in. The EU needs to step in because our offensive line is a crime. It is horrendous. And something that I had issues with this game, and really with a lot of the games that we've played, is I don't necessarily mind holding penalties. Got to do what you got to do to protect your quarterback. At the end of the day, I would rather a 10-yard holding penalty than starting quarterback, is out for 2 weeks because of a concussion because he got absolutely lit up on a play, or, some sort of a twisted ankle, bad knee, whatever it is. I will always take a holding penalty in the event that you're protecting the quarterback. What I cannot stand for the life of me is the amount of false starts that this O-line gets. It boils down to coaching. It really does. That is all that a offensive line problem, as far as offsides, boils down to, is guys not knowing when the snap is and that is 100% coachable. There are plenty of teams across this league who they get plenty of holding calls, but they don't get the same amount of false starts that we get. And I would be curious to see if we are the most penalized team in the league currently. I know, according to Elfpedia, we were the 5th most penalized team last year. And that tells me that there's a pretty good chance we're definitely one of the top 5 most penalized teams this year as well. But I really would not be surprised if we weren't number 1. Because I cannot tell you how many drives we start to make progress and then we get hit with a false start and it ruins all momentum. And again, that is not protecting your quarterback. That is doing the exact opposite, honestly, because a lot of times if you get those penalties, then sorry, there's a car passing by. In those instances when you get those penalties, that normally means that you've got to pass on the next play instead of running. I think about there was in the third quarter, there was a 3rd and 1. We were marching down the field, 3rd and 1. We get a false start. It's 3rd and 6. We get a second false start, and it's 3rd and 11. So now you absolutely have no choice but to throw the ball. And so, yeah, that opens up your quarterback for all kinds of hits, additional injuries, things of that nature. And yeah, that boils down to coaching. I don't know who the offensive line coach is for Barcelona, but I do know that Coach Shelton is the head coach. And that's what you should be working on every waking moment of the day. Because I understand that our O-line is not as talented as other O-lines. And talent is not something that you can just coach. If your offensive linemen struggle with whether it's size or speed, footwork, whatever else, you can continue to develop players and you can find ways to make your guys better. But you're not just going to overnight go from having not good offensive linemen to having good offensive linemen. But teaching them to be disciplined, which is what false starts boils down to. False starts is solely discipline. That falls directly on the O-line coach and the head coach. And your OC, whoever the OC is. Those 3. That's what it boils down to. So that is my biggest complaint of today. Well, my 1A, because I do have a 1B complaint as well that I have written down here. But that is my 1A complaint for the day is, yeah, O-line is absolutely atrocious and lacks any ounce of discipline and has hurt us on several drives throughout the season where we're actually making plays and they get called back. Or, we have to backtrack because of those false starts. My 1B complaint this year, if O-line's the 1A, my 1B complaint this year, Monton needs to be benched expeditiously. He should not be our starting running back. Honestly, I don't think he should be on this team. There are so many rugby players in Europe that I find it hard to believe that Monton is the best running back you can have on this team. And I believe that Take Hamza has been better in every game, except for I don't know if he really got any touches in game 1 against Helvetic that we won. But in every other game this season, Take Hamza has been the better running back. And on top of that, I genuinely think you could pick up anybody, from a rugby team that's, maybe they're not in the season right now, or, running back is an athlete position. You can find, Spain has so many athletes, just pure, strong, fast, intelligent athletes. Monton is not one of them. For just a little bit of reference here, I pulled up some stats. This is from Elfpedia, weeks 1 through 4, so not including this past week, but weeks 1 through 4. He has been 13 for 26, 11 for 44, 6 for 1. And then last week was 13 for 28. That totals out to 43 attempts on 99 yards. In the first 4 weeks of the ELF season, he could not crack 100 total yards. He is giving us 2.3 yards per carry here. Unacceptable. I know that the offensive line is not particularly good, but Take Hamza is averaging almost 4 yards a carry right now. If I remember correctly, I didn't write his down, but he's been doing significantly better. So that tells me that there's at least opportunity for someone who is better to take those snaps. If you don't want Take Hamza to be your every down back, I totally understand. I get how that works. We've had that same struggle here on the Dallas Cowboys for a couple of years now with, Tony Pollard, and we'll see about Rico Dowdle this upcoming year. But Spain has enough athletes between football, as far as like soccer football, not American football. I know it gets a little weird with the terminology, but as far as, soccer goes and as far as rugby goes, there are enough fast, strong, talented athletes in the country of Spain that Tony Monton does not need to be on the field. I'm sorry. I've been very wary of calling people out by name, especially because I'm new to this fan base and I don't want to step on any toes because I am the outsider looking in, but I know football and I know that this guy is not a football-worthy player. He's not. 99 yards in 4 games, 2.3 yards a carry. And today, specifically, we were marching down the field. We were getting prepared to, if all things aligned correctly, should have taken the lead 18-12 because we're marching down the field. Levi Lewis is running his ass off out there. Donadell's making plays. It's a little check down pass to Monton. Would have been a great check down because it would have probably, I believe it would have been like 3rd and 2. Setting it up for a good long drive, and he fumbles, and it gets taken back for a touchdown. That sucked the life out of this team. And that's not the first time that a bad Monton play has sucked the life out of this team. He's got to go. I'm sorry. If you want to keep him on the team and make him your third string in case of emergencies, fine, so be it. But he brings absolutely nothing to the table for this team. And then my last complaint, so I had my 1A, my 1B. This is the what I would say is my third biggest complaint about this team. I originally thought it was the defense, and I looked back at some old footage from weeks 1 through 4, and I don't think that the defense is that big of an issue. And that's crazy for me to say, given the fact that we got blown out, 65-7 to Tirol? I don't think that the defense is as big of an issue as the offense. I think that the defense gets put in a lot of bad positions. Like, for example, today, yes, Milano scores 27 points, but, 7 of those came from that fumble touchdown. And then another 7 came from us not being able to convert on a 4th and 2, leading to a very easy score for Milano afterwards. Defense played a relatively good game today. They played clean, not a ton of penalties. They were getting good pressure on the quarterback. There were some issues. There were 2 different instances where we should have caught interceptions, and the first of the 2 later led to a touchdown for Milano. So, if we get an interception there, maybe this game does look different. But the offense's inability to be able to move the chains and to make good decisions and take care of the ball really puts a lot of stress on a defense that isn't particularly great. They have moments where they look formidable, but that's about it. And we've got to be better on the offensive side. Our offense lacks any type of creativity. I can tell you exactly what the offensive plan is. It's run on first down, see if you can get 3 yards, make it 2nd and 7. Then we throw a short pass, normally up the middle of the field, trying making it a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. And then depending on what the play call is after that, we do either another short pass play or we try to run up the middle. That is what the game plan is. It is, I as an individual my highest form of playing football came in middle school, and I have never been a coach. And I can tell you that is the game plan. And there are minds way greater than mine on the other side of the ball who know that that's what it is. And they're taking advantage of that. There is no play action, very, very minimal pre-snap movement, and we're not utilizing our best weapon, which is Amani Donadell. Man, I would be using him like Brandon Ayuk or, the other guy on the 49ers as well, who just absolute monster. I'm spacing on it now just because I'm so frustrated. But I would be putting guys in motion. I would be, doing crossing routes, seeing if can be a natural pick that doesn't get a flag, and things of that nature to set up my best wide receiver, Donadell. And we're not doing that. There are no jet sweeps with him. There's very little of anything. And I get that a lot of that, again, falls on the offensive line and how bad they are. But you got to try something. You can't have this vanilla of an offense with as bad of an offensive line as we have and expect any type of results. We haven't scored more than 20 points since week 1. We haven't. You're not going to win games if you can't score more than 20 points. Simple as that. That translates to all forms of football across any league. Doesn't matter if it's college, NFL, ELF, AFL. You've got to be able to score more than 20 points a week. Because then, unless you just have the best defense in the league, which we don't, maybe if we had Vienna's defense, we could get away with that. But we don't, so there's that. So that takes me to the good things that we got out of this week. First and foremost, Donadell is still that dude. That touchdown catch that he had, honestly, that was just disgusting. Incredible catch as he's sliding, makes, is able to keep his body in the end zone, brings it down. Great effort. And he had some other big plays this game, some big catches. Donadell, I feel so bad for him because he just feels like such a one-man band. He reminds me similarly to friend of the Fourth Down Fiasco pod, Carlton Aiken Jr., where it just seems like he's just kind of by himself out there. The only guy capable of making really any plays that matter, at least on the offensive side of the ball. So Donadell is still that dude. I hope and pray that he stays with Barcelona next year. But I also wouldn't be upset if he moved to an actual contending team. If Donadell decided that his talents would be better as, maybe the second wide receiver on Paris or, Stuttgart or whatever else, I would totally understand, But Donadell is an animal. Make no mistake, he is an animal. My other good points from the game is Levi Lewis is starting to understand more now that as soon as that pocket collapses, you just got to take off and run. And I do want to talk about this a little bit more. I understand the hesitancy, number one, because the size of Levi Lewis, he's not a big guy. So when he takes those hits, I'm sure they hurt. Levi Lewis, I'm not a huge guy. I'm 6 foot, 200, and the hits that he's taking, I wouldn't want to take it. And he's probably about 5'10", probably about 185, to put any of that into perspective. So those hits hurt. And as a former rugby player who used to get hit by massive dudes, when you're undersized, taking those hits is never fun. And it definitely makes you wary of trying to make plays like that, because getting hit hurts so much. But he definitely figured out today that, yeah, when that pocket collapses, in the previous 4 weeks, it's been pocket collapses, and he's still trying to make a play with his arm. And I appreciate that, because as a quarterback, yes, you want to be a pocket passer, and being a pocket passer ultimately in most situations is the best thing for the team. But with how bad this offensive line is, you can't do that. You've got to, as soon as that pocket collapses, you've got to take off and go. And there were several plays, like a good 5 to 6 plays today, where he just took off and ran, and that's all she wrote, and he'd get a 15-yard gain here, 20-yard gain there, 8-yard gain here, but hey, it sets you up for, 3rd and 2 rather than, 3rd and 15 because you took the sack. I would say the one thing that he does need to work on is in those situations where he isn't able to take off, but he is outside of the tackle box. Dude, you got to throw it away. There were a couple of sacks this game, and there have been tons of sacks in weeks 1 through 4, where it's like, dude, you're outside of the tackle box. Just throw it. Get it out of there. Because I don't believe that the ELF penalizes that. Correct me if I'm wrong. If that's the case, and it's just doesn't matter the tackle boxes, if you are on the run and you throw it way out of a receiver's ability to be able to get it, then, and that's a penalty, then I get why he does it. But I don't think that is the case here. So yeah, as soon as you get out of that pocket and you don't think that you're going to be able to take off, dude, just throw it away. Just throw it away instead of taking sacks. But that wasn't a huge issue today. And yeah, again, I think that something that made him so dynamic whenever he was in college, whenever he was with the Raging Cajuns, was his ability to run with the football. And, with the Raging Cajuns being a smaller D1 program, their offensive line wasn't particularly great, especially against better competition. And that was something that he thrived off of, was, okay, pocket collapses, I'm going to take off, I'm going to get 7 yards. That's going to really make you think about rushing that 5th guy. Maybe you should not. Maybe you shouldn't, stack the box like that. Maybe you shouldn't bring a corner off of my wide receiver, because if I make him miss, I can go get a 20-yard gain, or the safety, whoever. And that really makes the defense much more honest, especially when your offensive line isn't nearly as good. So definitely good stuff out of Levi Lewis today. Dude was running for his life on every play, which that's been a theme for the first now 5 weeks of the season. And my last good point here is our defense does have some pride. Our defense, even till the last whistle, was hitting people. And I respect that, and I like that, and I appreciate that. There, again, were some issues with some dropped interceptions that could have helped out this team. But at the end of the day, I don't pin this loss on the defense. The offense lost us the game. And I don't want to pin it on specifically one person, because that's not fair. It's not right. But the game drastically changed with that Monton fumble that led to the Seamen touchdown. So yeah, we are 2-3 through 5 weeks. And honestly, if it weren't for a couple of really bad field goal attempts from Helvetic last week, we should have lost that game too. We should be 1-4. We should be 1-4. Let me just take a really dramatic sip of my margarita as a car passes by. But we should be 1-4 on the season, for being completely honest. We did not deserve to win last week's game. I will say that with my full chest. We did, and that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But Helvetic was the better team overall last week, and we were able to get away by the skin of our teeth. But yeah, we should be 1-4. We're 2-3. We have no chance of making the playoffs at this point. And I'm not even really thinking about that. I'm more so thinking about building blocks for next season. And we have building blocks. We have a dynamic wide receiver 1 who, I'd probably say about half the teams in this league would still be a wide receiver 1. I think Donadell has proven himself to be a freak show athletic weapon. And we don't give him enough from a play call standpoint to be successful. We have a good quarterback in Levi Lewis. I think that whenever Levi's not under pressure, he can deliver a ball where it's supposed to be. And I think when he is under pressure, and he's starting to learn now, he has the ability on his feet to be able to make a difference. He's fast. He's agile. His side-to-side movement is insane. I saw some big plays today where as soon as he felt that pressure and he took off, he would then make a linebacker miss. And yeah, a lot of those bigger dudes aren't going to be able to keep up with him side to side. So you've got your quarterback, you've got your wide receiver one. We need to focus on the offensive line. And now that I have a better understanding of the A import rules and stuff, and that you can only have 2 on the field, unfortunately that means that Lewis and Donadell would be the 2 on the field, and we can't have any A import offensive linemen. It is what it is. You got to start using some E imports either on some dudes from the Pacific Islands, whether if that's like Samoa, Tonga, New Zealand. I believe New Zealand's still considered one of the Pacific Islands, even if they're not. Regardless, you need to start getting some Pacific Islanders on that offensive line ASAP. That falls under the E import rules. Okay? And you need to find a better running back. If you don't believe that it's Take Hamza, that's fine. He hasn't struck me as a guy who can carry the RB1 load. I think that he's a fantastic RB2. Truly. Like he's got some certain qualities, especially when he starts going downhill. He can drag people along with him, and that's huge. But you've got to find an RB1, a true RB1. Find a rugby player. There are enough rugby players for smaller programs across Europe you can plug and play. And then on the defense, there are upgrades to be had, but I think your bigger weakness is offense. On the defense, I'd love to see us use our A imports on defensive line. So then that way, the more pressure you can get on a quarterback, the better your defense plays as a whole. That translates across all forms of football. So, to recap, this year's season is shot. It is. We just gotta own it, take it. It is what it is. 3 losses in I believe it's a 12-game season, and only 6 teams make the playoffs. And you currently have at least 3 teams that are you have 3 teams that are currently undefeated as far as when I'm recording this podcast. That might change by the end of it, but you at least have 3 undefeated teams, and you've got another 2 to 3 teams that only have 1 loss. And those teams are all significantly better than you. It's not like, we had to play a really hard schedule. We've played a lot of softer competition. And we are 2-3 and should be 1-4, but that's, again, I already ranted on that. Our job is to look forward to the next season and see how much you can build off of this current season. And again, that looks like upgrades to the offensive line specifically. That is a must. You better get on your hands and knees and beg Donadell and Lewis both to come back next season. Because there was definitely I saw some visible frustration from Donadell towards the offensive line today. And he had every right to be. It was after probably their 1,000th penalty that they had for false start. Puts up his hands. He's not happy, clearly. And they're probably, I want to say, on like the 40. And ended up having to punt that possession. Next year, this year we need to focus specifically on what do we have, who's a baller, who's not, what positives can we take away from this season, who can we develop, etc., etc. You better get on your knees and beg for Donadell and Lewis to come back. You need to make as many upgrades to that offensive line as possible. If you've got to wipe out that entire offensive line and put in all E imports, got to do what you got to do. That offensive line is not formidable in any competitive form of football whatsoever. That's got to be step one. Keep Donadell, keep Lewis, and make the offensive line significantly better. If you got to pull guys from Germany, from Austria, so be it. You got to pull guys from the Pacific Islands, so be it. If you got to use every import tag you possibly can on your offensive line, you better go do it. Third thing is you got to go out there, you got to go get you a better running back. If you don't think that Take Hamza is that guy, go find you a rugby player in Spain or use an import if you have any extra after the offensive line to get that done. That needs to be done. And then the last thing is, if you can make any upgrades to your defensive line, do it. There was some pressure today, but I've noticed that the pressure on quarterbacks only comes when we play against lesser competition. I'm not saying correlation equals causation, but it is an interesting thing to take a look at, that the most amount of sacks that we've had have come against Helvetic both times. And then even this game against the Seamen, we were able to get, a decent amount of pressure on the quarterback, but that was only because Milano's also not a good team. We weren't able to get any type of pressure against Madrid or Tirol. So, yeah, that's what it boils down to, is bring back Donadell and Lewis, fix the offensive line however you can, sell your soul to the devil. I don't care. You got to do something. That's the only way you can protect your quarterback and give your playmakers peace of mind. Upgrade the running back position, because Monton is not the answer. And then get some more beef, some more athletes on that defensive line. I do think that our linebackers and corners aren't particularly great, but a great defense always starts with the defensive line. That's one of those things that translates across all forms of football, any league. Doesn't matter. A stout defensive line makes everybody better, just like a stout offensive line makes everybody better. You have to make the changes in the trenches. That's what you got to do. I appreciate y'all for listening. You can follow me on Twitter /X at jpry the guy. You can also follow the Fourth Down Fiasco, which is our podcast network. This is where you can listen to the Barcelona Bad Boys podcast. You can follow us on Twitter /X at @4thdown_pod. You can also follow us on Instagram at Fourth Down Fiasco. You can also follow me individually on Instagram at what is my Instagram handle? Oh, it's my full name. Duh. You can follow me on Instagram at Jordan Alexander Pryor. And yeah, I will see y'all when I see y'all. And for the folks who do listen to this, I appreciate you so much. Truly. If you could give this a 5-star rating, it's the best way for us to grow all of our shows. But yeah, vaya con Dios, mis amigos. And I will talk to y'all next time. Take care.